evening, so welcome to the Wolverhampton Amateur Radio Society talk with friends from Telford and anyone else who's joined us who's had the invite. This is great to see you. There's a good number of us in the room here in Wolverhampton at the British Legion. And tonight's speaker is Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB. I hope I can remember that correctly. And he has been the editor, the kit building columnist in CQ magazine for a good number of years, and he'll tell us all about it. So I think he's built more kits than I have. So that's a good start.
Only a few.
Only a few 100,000 money, right? That's good. Right. So hopefully, the floor's yours, Joe. Tell us all about you and how you got into it, and what sort of things you discovered along the way.
All right, let me do this, and we'll see if that works.
We're seeing slides. This is cool. This is cool.
Okay, and I need to, let me see if I can get this to go. Okay, how's that? We got full screen?
We have full screen. Excellent. Everybody see that at the back? Yeah. The members are delighted.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And for those curious who just came online, I'm on fiber here. So I got a gig up and a gig down solid. And so it's wonderful to be out in the middle of nowheres in the middle of the country. A little bit about who I am. I was first licensed in 1969. My personal Elmer was Leo Meyerson, W0 Get Fat Quick. And he was famous for being the founder of World Radio Laboratories in Council Bluffs, Iowa, across from Omaha. And they manufactured the Globe and Galaxy radios back in the 1960s and 50s and 70s. So I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. I used to work there often. I live in Lincoln, the capital city of the state of Nebraska. My career was mostly as an IT field tech. I'm mostly retired now. Since the November of 2009 issue, I have been writing the monthly kit building column. I was told it was going to be about a 3 or 4 month series, and it's still going on. So it's been popular. And so this summer I will begin my 15th year of writing for CQ. And I'm also the contributing author of the Construction Techniques chapter in the Big ARL Handbook since the 2014 edition. I also take a lot of photos, and I enter my best artistic photos in the Nebraska State Fair. And I made my first trip to Dayton in 1975, and I've spoken there 31 times. Actually, I have to change that's 32 because I was just there. And I take a lot of pictures there, and I have a YouTube channel, and you can see my musical slideshows where I set them carefully to music. And you get to see all the photos of Hamvention set to music, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, I have to answer this question because most people don't know. Where is Nebraska? We're right in the middle, absolutely in the middle of the country. And if you look at the map in the upper left here, I'm going to see if I can arrow to it. You got the Omaha Council Bluffs area in the right, and then a short distance, about 45 minutes away, is Lincoln. Lincoln is about 300,000 people, so it's a pretty good sized city. The Omaha metro area is just under 1 million in the metro area. And then the rest of the state, which is pretty spread out. It's a long ways. If I was to drive from downtown Omaha on the freeway all the way to Wyoming, it is 455 miles to go from right to left across Nebraska, and about 250 something from north to south. So it's a long trip. And so when you're looking to get all the states, well, the ones in the middle are the tougher ones, and I'm always glad to give out Nebraska on any band or mode. I'll try it. So let's start off and talk about things that we want to keep on hand when we're building these wonderful kits, like we were talking about earlier. You want to have assortments of pre-sorted standardized parts. You can get assortments of common values of resistors, capacitors, diodes, transistors, ICs, LEDs. and I check Amazon for this, and I think Amazon UK will have these as well, because I think they come from China, and they are compartmentalized containers that are already labeled that have all these different parts in it. And for like $10 or something, I'm able to get almost 1,000 capacitors and stuff in these assortments. And so for a reasonable investment, you can have all the different kind of spare parts you need. And we'll get into why you're going to need those in a little bit. You want to have 9-volt battery snaps, battery holders, things like that available for your kits. Commonly used plugs and jacks, such as your 1/4-inch plugs, your 1/8 inch, 2 and 3 conductor, and so forth, your RCA type phono plugs and jacks, PL259s, all sorts of adapters, because a lot of kits now have SMA or BNC connectors on them, and you may have a PL259 coming from your antenna. 12-volt coaxial power plugs and jacks are good to have in your spare parts bins. You want to make sure if it's a 2.1 or 2.5 millimeter, and if the center pin is positive. Now, most kits nowadays are 2.1 millimeter with a center pin positive, but some are different. So you want to make sure you get it right. You want to have solder wick or other things like solder suckers or things like that for when you're desoldering. And you're going to want to have an emery board available for your enameled wire, and a cookie sheet. That's what we call it here. I think you'd call it a biscuit tray or something, and or a soldering mat. That helps a lot as well to protect your work surface, because we don't want to destroy our desk or workbench with hot solder. And the reason I say a cookie sheet is, at least in this country, it's about anywhere from 11 inches to 15 inches or so wide. And it has a lip that comes up about 3/4 of an inch or so. So parts don't roll off or get away from you. And you can ground that for ESD. So I highly recommend those, and they draw off the heat so you don't bother your work surface. Now, a multimeter is kind of a must to have, and they don't have to be expensive. The one on the right, we have a store here in the States called Harbor Freight, and they sell these for $6. And everybody says, well, can I get away with one of those? And I say, absolutely. Because although it's not quite as accurate as a Fluke, it's more than good enough for most kit building and so forth. On the left, I've been able to order through Amazon things like this. And this is an oscilloscope meter that was only like $60. And pretty amazing for what it does. It will actually draw voltage graphs and charts, and then it's an oscilloscope. And so you touch the same probes and you can see the waveform. And so having a pocket oscilloscope as well as meter is pretty valuable when you're working on kits. You want to choose the right soldering iron. This particular example that I use is from a company called Xtronic USA, and they do sell these through Amazon. I'm not sure if they're available in the UK. They are distributed from a company right here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was kind of surprised to find that out because I had no idea. And this particular one comes with all that stuff for about $60. And it takes K0NEB tips. So if you can't get the replacement tips online, you can get the K0NEB type tips. You want to make sure that your soldering station is temperature controlled, not just variable. And so if it has a digital display, although there are some that are analog that are also temperature controlled, digital display generally are pretty much sure that they are. This particular one holds the temperature within plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius, which is pretty much the standard for commercial electronic assembly. It has 2 different places to clean your tip, and the way you can tell if something is ESD safe is look to see if it has a 3-prong plug. As long as it's got a grounded plug for your mains supply, then you're going to be in good shape. And this one doesn't have a heavy transformer in it or anything. It is very controlled. And that's their website. I do not know if they are available there, but I know they do sell through Amazon and through eBay stores. So you never know. I don't know what they do with that, but this particular one is quite a good deal for as little as it is and works wonderful. These you will also find through Amazon. The TS100 and now actually the TS101 is a compact digital temperature controlled soldering iron, and it has all the features of the other one. It'll go to sleep mode where if you're not using it, it will cool down. So you're going to protect your tip and keep from getting corrosion and so on from leaving it hot. It is fully digital temperature controlled. Usually comes with the stand. Some of these kits will come with 2 different types of tips. And when you replace the tip, you're also replacing the heating element. And these things are kind of interesting because they run on anything from about 12 volts to about 20 to 24 volts. And so they usually supply a laptop type power supply with it. But I've been able to take a cord, and when I was out on field day last year, I plugged it right into my 12-volt bench supply that was running the radio, and guess what? I could solder and fully digital temperature controlled. So in an emergency, something like this would be really good if you have 12 volts available. The one on the left is also something that's available online. That is a vacuum desoldering station, and it is also temperature controlled. And what it is it's a hollow tipped soldering gun, but you really don't use it to solder, use it to suck up solder because it's hollow tipped. So you put it over that connection on the circuit board and you can feel that lead poking through. You get it right down there flat on the board and you pull the trigger and it sucks up all the solder and cleans the hole out, makes it a lot easier to get that part out. So when I'm building kits, that's kind of a must thing to have, especially if you're going to try and pull an IC or a transistor or something and you need to save it because you can't find another one. It's great to practice using desoldering tools, using junk circuit boards. So if you're at a ham flea market and a guy's got a bucket that's got all sorts of circuit boards and it says free, take advantage of that because you can use those to practice desoldering. The one on the right sells here in this country for about $49. It is an analog but fully temperature controlled soldering station, and it's sold through Harbor Freight, which is a discount tool distributor that's all over the States. So I'm not sure that one would be available, but the desoldering station is available worldwide. Same thing with the solder. I highly recommend 6337 solder. And the reason is that it flows a lot better and it looks a lot better. Like I said, it'll flow right through the board. So you get a little bit of solder going through the top. So the part is well secured, especially when you're working with toroids and things like that. And when you're doing hand soldering, sometimes your hand's a little jittery. And so you want to be careful and make sure that you don't move anything till the solder cools. Well, with 60/40 solder, that's going to be a problem because it has a longer plastic state. This has a much shorter plastic state, and so it's going to do a lot better. If you can't get this, which I'm doubting you probably get this particular brand, you're going to want to look for 6337 solder that is rosin core and no clean. And I'm not sure if they allow that because it's got lead in it. And I'm not sure you guys are allowed that. So I'd have to look. Some nice things to have in your kit building bench is a variable voltage power supply that's metered, especially with dual meters, because if you're trying to build a little pixie kit that puts out 0.5 watt and it's drawing 3 amps, something's going to be getting warm. So you want to be able to vary that power supply. And with some of Hans's kits, like the QCX and QDX and now the QMX, some of those run real well on 10 volts. And so it's good to have a variable voltage power supply and the meters so you can see how much current your kit is drawing. A frequency counter is also a real good thing to have, because you want to check these oscillators, make sure they're correct, and make sure you can calibrate your counter. An oscilloscope is worthwhile as well. I found CRT scopes much cheaper in flea markets than ever. I saw several Tektronix scopes that were working in great shape for $80, $90 at the flea market at Dayton. And Dayton's usually kind of a bit overpriced in some of the stuff in the flea market. And I was surprised to find those. And there are scope kits as low as about $23 online at this web address I have up there. Dummy load. If you're building kits, one of the first things I do, if it's a transmitter or transceiver, the very, very first time I power it up, I have a 50 ohm dummy load hooked to it. And the reason is that you don't know if a solder blob or a mistake or something might put it in the transmit mode, even without a key plugged in, or something is stuck on your key, like your soldering iron or something. And so you want to have that dummy load there, because most of these kits do not have VSWR protection. And so have that dummy load there. And if it's got a built-in watt meter, even better yet, so you can see if it's putting out something inadvertently when you first power it up. Because after all, if you plug in a kit transmitter to power, as long as the key isn't keyed down, you shouldn't be seeing a carrier. So you want to protect that output transistor. So always have the dummy load plugged in first before you hook in the power. The vacuum desoldering station that I mentioned before is worthwhile. There's also a much more inexpensive version of that it looks like a typical pencil type iron, but it also has the hollow tip and it has a suction bulb on it to suck up the solder. General coverage receiver is a great thing to have on your kit building bench, because it's good for both entertainment and testing and checking band conditions, because especially lately where we're getting these radio blackouts, well, try and imagine this, of course, putting together a 40 meter direct conversion receiver and hooking it up to an antenna and hearing maybe a little static, but no signals. And then I thought, oh, well, I wonder what's wrong. I flip a switch and I hook my 817 to it. And guess what? I'm hearing the same thing. So you want to check online also to make sure what your band conditions are before you hook up a receiver. So having a good, well-known general coverage receiver that you've been using for listening to shortwave broadcast or whatever is great for checking band conditions. Here I use an AM FM clock radio as well for entertainment and time reminders. And that way, you know, on the hour when I hear the legal ID of the radio station, I look up and say, oh, it's 4 o'clock. And I go back to winding those toroids or whatever. And all of a sudden I hear the ID again. Well, guess what? Another hour has gone by. If you're testing receivers, you want to have a random wire strung out or a working antenna. I just have a little piece of wire that hangs out, and that's how I test simple receivers. Solder roll holder. And the correct kind of solder. Once again, I use 6337, 031, or 025, rosin core, no clean. That seems to flow the easiest when building kits. Like I said, I don't know if they allow leaded solder there, but I'll tell you what.
We use plenty of leaded solder.
Oh, good. So you can use it.
Yeah, and the aviation industry still loves it because it prevents tin whiskers.
Exactly. That is a big problem when you're building kits. And so it's great to have the 6337, and I use 031 or 025 rosin core, no clean. And you want to have something to store your kits to keep parts secure between your sessions, because the enemy of all kit builders is cats. All right. I have one of them. I used to have two. We lost one a couple of weeks ago. This particular company here in the States makes tackle boxes for fishermen, but they also make them for hardware stores. They just color them different, and they make it for ladies' jewelry from craft stores, and they make those pink and lavender. So you can get the same exact thing from these guys. And I think they might have the equivalent there. And what it is it's got 4 pull-out trays with movable dividers in it and a larger chamber up on the top. And so I can put my partly completed circuits and larger parts and stuff in the top. And when I go to my group kit build thing every month, actually every couple of weeks, I can pull out one of the trays and say, I'm going to work on this kit today. So I can keep 4 projects going at once using something like this. So this is what the tray looks like on the right that comes out of that one. And I'm sure they sell these for fishing and jewelry work there as well. And the way I sort my parts is I put the parts that I use the most up in front. So I have the resistors and then different kinds of capacitors. And then I kind of work my way back through the hierarchy of electronic parts through the solid state components like transistors, diodes, ICs. And then I get chokes and so forth. And in the back, I've got the toroids, knobs, plugs, jacks, connectors, and hardware. So once again, I try to put the parts that I use most often in the compartments that are closer to me, so I don't have to reach over them. Some kits are stage by stage, and those are your more complex kits that might have over 100 parts or so, and they want you to do a stage at a time and test it to make sure that you're okay, so you don't get 300 parts installed and have no idea why it doesn't work. And usually they start with the power supply. So if you'll notice in here, I have these little pieces of paper in the bottom of each compartment. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. And the reason for that is that as I get through each stage of the kit, I've already used those parts in that compartment. So as you can see, I follow the order in which the parts are actually used, and I use the resizing capability of this container to size it for each stage of the kit. And you'll notice there's only a handful of parts in each compartment. So most stage by stage kits have a manual that tells you to build it in stages from the power supply onward. So once you do the power supply, there might be 6 or 7 parts in there, and you're going to have to be able to power that board up. And once again, make sure it's not on a metal cookie sheet or anything like that. And you're going to supply it with the power source that you're going to use once it's done. And they're going to have you say, okay, do you have 12 volts here? Do you have 9 volts here? Do you have 3.3 volts there? 5 volts there? It's going to ask you to test different parts of the board to see where the power is correct. And so once it's passed that test, guess what? Now you can go on to the next stage. So make sure that you have the test equipment you need. Now, in that case, you probably just need a voltmeter. If the stage doesn't work, you can fix it pretty easily because you've only put in a handful of parts. And so it's a lot easier to find what you might have messed up rather than going through 300 parts. So once again, you have a smaller number of parts used at a time in a stage by stage kit. Elecraft is really good at this. Like I said, you place the parts for each stage in its own container. So when it's completed, there shouldn't be any more parts left. And once again, a reminder, you might need a key, you might need a dummy load or something. Make sure that you have the proper test equipment needed, and they will tell you to test each stage before you proceed on. A lot of kits have no sequence. it gives you a parts list and a diagram, like a circuit board diagram. So you're going to start with all the resistors first, and my method, and then all the capacitors and so forth. So when you've gone through the list of resistors, and you have no resistors left, you can be pretty well certain that you probably got it right. If you have resistors or capacitors left over, you got to double check, because guess what? That might be an option. There might have been an option in that kit, like some of the Pixies for different bands. So you might have an extra resistor or capacitor left over, but it's going to tell you which ones you're going to need. And any extra parts you have, well, they get to go in those parts assortments we talked about earlier. So I kind of work up through the hierarchy of electronic parts. After capacitors, I do your diodes, transistors, and ICs, and then your less common parts. And you want to check the board carefully, and along with the instructions, to see if it goes better if certain parts are put in before others, so you don't block access to them. I had one that had one of those wonderful BNC connectors at the output, and I forgot that it had this little tiny capacitor underneath it, and boy, was that hard to get in. So you want to make sure that you get it right, and don't block access to a part unless it calls for that. And once again, you're going to make sure that the supply of each part is exhausted as you complete the installation. And what I do is I just go down through the list, R1 through, let's say, R10 or whatever, and I work them in order and populate the board that way, because it's not done stage by stage. But then I double check and I make sure that each part is where it belongs. And like I said, if there's a part left over, I'm going to see if I can find out why. The trouble with toroids. There's a lot of people that, yeah, there's a lot of people that cringe when they see these things in a kit. This one on the right is on a single-sided board, but it is not just an inductor, it is a transformer, because you see those two turns of yellow. And the way we count the turns in these things is, excuse me, is how many times it goes through the middle of the toroid. We call it the hole in the donut. So you're going to want to unwind the wire real carefully and stretch it out so that you don't have any kinks in it, because you don't want to do that. And you count your turns as each pass through the center of the core. The way I melt the insulation is I use a soldering iron and I turn the heat up all the way, and I make kind of a teardrop sized drop of solder on the end, and then I hold it to the wire pretty much next to the toroid, and then you can see it smoke and sizzle for a while, and then after it burns it off, I slowly draw the hot solder down that wire away from the toroid. And so what it does is it melts off the solder and it tins the wire. Now on this QMX, I can't do that on certain ones of these because the holes have such little tolerance that you cannot put a pre-tinned wire in the hole. So you have to read the instructions of the kit to make sure that that's not an issue. If it's an issue, they will tell you. And Hans certainly warns you several times, don't tin the wires on certain of these toroids. Others you can. If it's real thick insulation and it's kind of a larger toroid used on some of these 100-watt amplifiers and so on, I use a cigarette lighter and I burn off the insulation so it's kind of blackened, and then I use the emery board to clean it off, and it gets to be a nice golden copper color, and then I tin it if needed. And I guess my suggestion is to take your time and enjoy the experience. Now, for those of you who are real toroid haters, I tell you to do them first. And the reason is that you can do them first, and then you can label them with a piece of tape that says like L1, L2, T1, T4, whatever. And so you have all of it done, and then you can put it in one of those containers that you've sorted your parts. And this is something I do quite often now. And so the toroid is ready to go. So when I come to that step in the directions to build the kit, all I do is stuff the wires through the board, tighten it up, and solder it, and that's it. It's just like plugging in a transistor or an IC. So there's common mistakes we make when we're building kits. Some RF chokes look exactly like a resistor, so you want to check their markings. RF chokes kind of have bigger bulges on the ends. Sometimes they're a different color. Sometimes they have like a gold and silver stripe or something. So you want to check the markings and look at your parts list, because it will tell you what they should look like. You want to double check your electrolytic and tantalum capacitors so you get the right values, and polarization, because if they're put in backwards, especially tantalums, they make really good firecrackers. You want to use a magnifying glass to check your 1/8 watt resistors, and use a meter if necessary to be sure what the value is. I highly recommend not using an incandescent light of any sort. I use a fluorescent or bright white LED based magnifier, lighted magnifier, so that the colors look correct. If you're using an incandescent bulb or what we call warm white LEDs, it's kind of a yellowish light. And so orange kind of looks like red, which kind of looks like brown. And it's really hard to tell things on these color codes. But using a bright white LED light or fluorescent light is what I recommend. You can also get what's called a component tester, and they are available as a kit as well, very low cost. And it's going to tell you a lot about your parts, and we're going to show you one of those in a little bit. You're going to want to watch your diode markings, make sure they're in correctly. The one end, I think it's the anode end, has a bevel or a stripe. Or is it the cathode? I'm trying to remember. Has a stripe or a mark or a black line or something, or a dot, so you know it's incorrectly. And most kit instructions will tell you what the marks are on the part and where they belong. You want to bend your leads really, really carefully to avoid breaking the ones that are fragile. Your little tiny glass diodes, those RF chokes, and those super tiny little capacitors are really vulnerable. And I use kind of a bending jig that is 3D printed. I don't have one in front of me, but I print those, and that helps me bend the parts correctly without breaking the leads. This is a component tester, and it's $12 US. I don't know what it is there, but I'm sure you can get it through that same web page. It's marked as a transistor tester, but it does more than that. It tests resistors, capacitors, diodes, transistors. It'll tell you if it's NPN or PNP, or if it's a MOSFET or a Darlington pair or an SCR, and it will tell you collector, base, emitter, drain, gate, source. All you got to do is put 3 different colored wires in the 1, 2, and 3, and you usually use a what you guys would call a crocodile clip on the end, and you can clip that to your part, and it will tell you, oh, it's a resistor between 1 and 3, and it's this many ohms. Oh, well, that's nice. It runs on a 9-volt battery, or anywhere from about 5.5 to 12 volts. This is a kit. The instructions are kind of your Chinese English, so you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But the board is very, very clearly marked. The transistor numbers are right next to them with parts outlines. The capacitors, like 104 or whatever, they're all numbered correctly. So it's really a pretty easy kit to put together, and absolutely valuable to anybody who builds a kit. Now, if you don't want to solder one of these things together, there's another version. And I've seen these available here in this country and also internationally, once again, online through eBay or Amazon. And it's a component tester. And it has a ZIF socket, and it's 123111. Okay, so you can put your part in there, or you can make 3 test leads out of those colored clip leads that you get, and put it in the 1, 2, 3 and lock it down. Now you have the wires again. This one is a kit in that you have to put the case together, and the most time consuming part of it is peeling off the material that keeps the plastic from being scratched in transit. And once you do that, there's no instructions on how to put it together. It's kind of like a little jigsaw puzzle, but it doesn't take but about 5 minutes and you'll get it all put together. The battery, you'll have to unscrew the whole thing to get the battery out, but you won't change it very often if you put a good one in there, because you push the button, the screen comes on, it analyzes the part. You can see here that it's telling me I have an NPN transistor. The collector's in pin 3, the base is in pin 2, and the emitter is in pin 1. The HFE, or gain, is 119, and it's telling me the forward voltage drop of 735 millivolts. So it's really a pretty thorough little gadget. And this one also does all the capacitors and so forth, and other kinds of transistors. And so, like I said, like on MOSFETs, it'll say DGS, or drain gate source. I would look online for a component tester or transistor tester and see if it also includes resistors, capacitors, and so on. They have some real nice ones that have a color screen. And in this country, I think they sell for about $30 or so, 30, 35 bucks. And some of them are rechargeable and use a cell phone charger to charge them up. This is an AM radio kit. This is put out by the 4-state QRP group. It is a simple 1 transistor medium wave receiver, but it actually has a separate transistor. That's the audio amp and regeneration part of this thing. But there's pretty much just 1 RF transistor in this. It actually works quite well. You're going to solder the parts to pads on the inside of this thing. There are no holes that you solder through. So if you're a first-time kit builder, it's pretty neat, because you solder the leads to pads and then you trim them off. And if you happen to put a part in wrong, or in the wrong pad or whatever, all you got to do is take the soldering iron, touch it to that pad, heat it up, and use the tip of the soldering iron to lift up the leg from the board. So you don't even need desoldering tools to take out parts and change them out. So it's kind of a fun kit, and it uses printed circuit board material to make up the case. And it's all printed, pre-punched and everything, and kind of a wonderful little kit from the 4-state QRP group. This is one called the wall wart tamer. And what this one does is it takes those noisy old wall warts and it filters them, regulates them, and puts out nice filtered controlled DC from about 17 volts down to about 1.5 volts at 1.5 amps. You'll notice there's a full wave bridge on the input. So guess what? You can put anywhere from, I think, 12 to 30 volts AC or DC. And in this country, there are like 24 volt and 30 volt AC transformers that we have in our houses that run our thermostats on our furnace or our front doorbell. And those are AC. And so you can get those at any hardware store and they'll work. Or in this case, I use an old laptop supply and I cut off that rotten old Dell connector and I strip the leads. And guess what? You don't care about which way they go in on the input, because you can run AC or DC and it's going to go through the bridge rectifier. So it'll come out in the right polarity. And on the right, of course, it is polarized plus and minus, you'll see on the right. It's got lots of holes and it mounts pretty easy and pretty simple kit. And I'm sure if you can't get this there, it's pretty easy to put one of these together. It's a great project and it's great for powering future kits. This is another 4-state QRP kit. If you don't like winding toroids, guess what? Your big inductors are wound for you. They are spiral wound on the main board. And that was created by none other than NM0S. That's David Kripe from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He is a senior level Collins radio engineer. And he came up with this way of making inductors for the kit. And it works wonderful. I'm just really impressed. You don't have to wind a toroid or anything, but as you can see, they are spaced quite a ways apart, and you can't have any other copper on the circuit board around them. And but if you've got space to do it, you can have your 3 big inductors on this, and it works absolutely wonderfully. This is a 1-watt CW transceiver, and unlike the Pixie kits that have a real rotten receiver, this is really, really good. I had signals that I was able to copy easily on this, and they were only in S1 or S2 on my Elecraft KX1. So and KX2 and KX3. They're all sitting there about at S1 or so. So if it copies a weak signal and you can work them, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. And it does have an IC audio amp, but there's no volume control. There's an on-off switch to turn it on and off. You get right about 1 watt out of it, and it has the straight key as part of the kit. This is another 4-state kit, and I use this as an example because this is a hybrid kit, and this is becoming more and more common in kit building. This is a 75-meter AM transceiver, puts out about 10 watts. It is full DDS synthesized, and it tunes outside the 75-meter band, so I've used it for shortwave broadcast listening as well. Kind of a neat little kit, but when you look inside, there's a lot of surface mount parts in there. Well, guess how many of them there are? It's like 132 surface mount parts in this kit. Okay, guess how many you have to do? None of them. So you only got like, I think it's 31 or 32 through hole parts that you will actually solder. And you'll be doing the wiring and everything else as well, and all the assembly. And of course, they reserved all the fun of winding 4 toroids for you. But those are not transformers. They're very simple, single winding type toroids that vary in the number of turns to make your output filtering. And it's really a fun kit to make. I've made several contacts with it. You can see the power switch and the power jack and the antenna jack on the back and the mic jacks on the front. And like I said, all those surface mount parts are already done for you. And the later version does not have the daughter board, the green board that you see in this. The later versions don't have that. That was also replaced with all surface mount parts. So that's where you can find this kit, and mine was serial number 1. This is a kit that's put out by a guy from Pennsylvania, and his main livelihood is making portable wild game calls, and they look kind of like boom boxes, and they put out the sound of different wildlife to attract them. And so he has access, of course, because he owns the company, to this entire electronics factory right there in Pennsylvania where he makes these things. And so he's come up with some brilliant kits. And this particular one has 2 circuit boards that kind of make a sandwich. And you'll notice all the parts are already sorted out for you. So the way you assemble this, and it's a 4-band CW transceiver, by the way, with digital display, you follow the instructions. You do the lower board first, then the upper board, then the final assembly. And so each step of the way, he has you cutting the little compartments on those strips where the parts are separated by heat sealing. If you look at the toroids, look at all the toroids. There's 9 toroids in there. Guess what? They're already done. They're already stripped. They're already tinned. They're ready to plug and play. So it's still a fun kit, and lots of parts you're going to solder. And when it's all put together, it works wonderful. You can see there are a lot of surface mount parts and some that aren't, that are already placed on the board. The ones that aren't, like those trimmer capacitors, are there because he actually pre-aligns those. That's part of the digital synthesizer. And so he pre-aligns the RF section. So all you have to do is stuff the parts in there following the instructions. And you're going to have one of the nicest portable radios, especially for parks and summits on the air. Really nice. There's no menus or anything like we're used to hassling with. You can adjust your power linear through the pot, and your keyer speed and your RF gain and your volume is all real pots. And so it's a fun kit to make. And it puts out about 5 to 7 watts. And I've made lots of QSOs with this portable, wonderful, wonderful kit. And it's called the TR35. And this is what it looks like. I put it in a weather-tight container. You can see in the container, you can see the display lit up there showing it's on 40 meters. And you can see there's a little straight key, and that is a straight key that I made printing on my 3D printer. I keep a notepad and pen in there, and headsets and coax adapter and the power cord and the key and everything. So that, and sometimes also a little 3D printed paddle that I put in there. So I have everything I need in that one little case, and just plug in the battery and the antenna, and I can enjoy being out in a park and being on the air. Wonderful kit, and goes together nicely and makes a really nice compact Go kit. So some more tips here. You want to remove the distractions when you're building a kit. So let your voicemail pick up your calls and so forth. RTFM. I don't know if you've heard that slogan, but RTFM in the IT business stands for Read the Fine Manual. Of course, in other vernaculars, you could say something else. Use your cookie sheet. Yeah, flaming. Okay. Flaming, I'll remember that. Use a cookie sheet to keep your parts from getting away and protect your work surface. Be sure you have batteries and power supply ready. And here's a hint. I go to one of these, I don't know if you have this kind of a thing. It's called Sam's Club here, and it's kind of like a large quantity type store. And so you can get batteries like AA's in the 48 pack. But I always check each battery before I put it in a kit. Check it with the meter, because every once in a while you might get a bad one. So make sure you test your batteries before you put them in the kit. Make sure you have the plugs, jacks, cables, everything you need to make your kit play. Keep those standard spare parts on hand, like your resistors and capacitors, because guess what? Sometimes the kit maker says, oh, you know, we used a different brand of transistor, and changing that 56K resistor to a 33K resistor makes it work a little better. So it's good to have a spare part on hand that you can either tack to the bottom of the board or replace a part with. You want to keep your soldering tip clean. I always clean mine when I hang it up and when I pick it up. Once again, use adequate lighting and magnification, only LED or fluorescent, and take your time and enjoy the fun. And if you've ever heard me on contests, this is what I look like when I'm done with the contest.
That's how I look before I start the contest. No, I can't touch.
Yeah, and I have sweepstakes plaques on the back wall here to prove it. I lose my voice, but boy, everybody needs Nebraska, and so that really helps. Going to show a few other kits here. This one is called the NS80, and nothing simpler. It is a super simple crystal controlled 5-watt CW transmitter. It is not a transceiver. It is a simple CW transmitter. So you have to have your own TR switch. But as you can see, there really isn't a lot to it, and you can put it together in about 30 minutes. really nice. And once again, you'll see it uses those spiral wound coils, so you don't have to wind a toroid. What's fun is on the bottom, and I just built this, so I haven't made any contacts with it yet. But what you do is you fill in with a Sharpie, you fill in the QSL card on the back, and then you take a picture of that and print it out, and you send it to your first contact that you make with it, and then get a QSL back from them. So on the bottom of your kit, we'll have a souvenir of your very first contact. Dummy loads, we were talking about that. This is one. You can't see the board right now, but it's in a 3D printed case, and it is made with all surface mount resistors. And it still only takes about 30 minutes to put it together. And it's a 5-watt dummy load with RF powered LEDs that will tell you what the power level is going in here. This is a kit from the 4-state QRP group. You will have to print your own case, but the STL files are available on Thingiverse online. We talked about the AM broadcast receiver, and there it is. I don't know if let me see if I can.
We suffer from a shortage of AM broadcast stations. They're dying on their feet.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're having a controversy in this country about auto manufacturers who are not putting AM radio in their new cars. So they're trying to kill off AM radio through the car stereos. But in this area where we depend on AM radio for severe weather bulletins and so on, that's not going over real well. This one I have not cracked open yet. This is the QMX, which is that latest version of the QRP Labs transceiver. And let me see, I have one of these that I actually assembled as a kit. This is the True SDX. Not real impressive, but it's fun. Kind of a fun kit to put together. So I have kits.
Did you ever build the helicraft KX2 then?
No, the KX2 was not a kit. The KX3 is a modular kit or pre-assembled. And so I did mine as the modular kit where you don't have to solder. And the KX1, which is very difficult, is not available anymore. And I do have one of those. And the difficulty of the KX1 is because it's a very high density circuit board, very easy to get solder bridges. And most of the resistors are what we call hairpin or vertical configuration to give you more room on the circuit board. And so the KX1 took me, I think, about 15 hours to put together. And I get all sorts of people saying, do you have one of those? And I say, well, yeah. Are you willing to give it up? Because finding those, because they're an excellent radio, they're very rare. And because I'm a pretty well-known kit builder, that, oh, I'd want one, especially that you built. I'm not going to give that one up too quickly. It's been a wonderful radio as well. And the fun of this is building all these kits and then saying, it's kind of like a lady's closet where you find all these different pairs of shoes and you wonder, well, what kind of pair we're going to use today? And it's kind of with me, I'm going to go out and put a park on the air. What am I going to use today? Am I going to use the TR35, or I'm going to take the KX2 or the KX3, a loop that I built from a kit, a dipole that I built from a kit? What am I going to take? And it's a lot of fun. There are not a lot of national parks around us, but we do have a lot of state parks that we can activate. And when I travel, it's always fun to take something along and do that as well. I see some images here. One of them, it looks like there's a QDX there, and I think there's one of those little tuners, the M-Tech tuner.
Did you ever build this?
No, and I've heard of that one, the HF Projects amplifier. That's like a 35-watt amplifier.
Yeah, 35, but eventually the mismatch in the MOSFETs kills it.
Oh,
So I've had it mended once, but my favourite thing I've made is it's probably very unavailable, but it's this Australian antenna analyzer
oh, wow.
by VK5JST, and we did it as a club project at the Telford Club years ago, and it's still wonderful. I haven't got any power for it. It's not, but you could have batteries in it, but they were a bit of a pain.
I like it. I like it says aerial analyzer. I like that. And
I use it at the weekend. I often use it. I couldn't afford an MFJ thing because they were several £100, whereas I could just about afford this, and it's this pride of making it. You can modify it to make it even better. So that's been fun.
okay, the tuner with the two knobs. I think that one looks familiar to me.
Yeah,
oh yeah, ZM2.
that was the first kit I built.
And those things will tune a wet noodle. Those are wonderful tuners.
I've matched the fence on a mountain with it, and put out a signal.
They're really nice tuners.
Yeah,
very good.
John and I in the Telford Club. I'll turn this guy on. You want to see this? This is the special when it comes up. This is Heather M0 HMO's a power meter, which is a thing of wonder. And that was made at the Buildathon for the GQRP Club.
Yeah, so that was made about 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a thing of wonder.
Is it a directional watt meter?
No, it's single end. So
okay.
It's 12 bands of operation, and I think it's a logarithmic amplifier. So the GQRP Club, they usually have a Buildathon where a kit is made for them. And that's at the Telford Hamfest up the road every September, so that's a good thing.
That looks like a fun project. I like that, and I like the use of that same kind of 1-inch display. Those are wonderful displays, and they don't draw much.
Yeah, this is our kit at the moment. We're building, which is a bandpass filter for 2 meters, and I made the kits up at home as best I could, and we're slowly getting them. There's 9 people want to build them, and there's only 2 soldering irons, so it's taking a while. And we haven't.
So you must have a lot of adjacent band interference then to use that.
Yes, especially with a wide band 2 meter handy talkie. We have emergency services paging transmitters on, especially on mountains where you want hilltops where you want to operate. And they're about 5 meters up and 2 meters. And this
very good.
Yeah, they're bad news. Yeah, obviously we got this guy here. Did you build a QRS?
No, I have not yet. But that's a really popular kit, and they're wonderful. They do the whisper beacon and the slow speed beacon.
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing. That is absolutely amazing. Yeah, I've got a QDX. Very American is this guy here, which is a tiny.
That's the hat for the Pi, I think, isn't it?
Tiny TNC from Pacific. What's it called? Pacific. Yeah, TNC Pi. NEX. So I haven't used it for years, but it was an early kit. And what about this? Have you come across these? These are bad news. These are bad news on put this on here. This is bad news on get it focus. Say the word focus, and it usually focuses. This is this is like £35 on AliExpress. You get a bag of this, and it's supposed to make a 2 meter power amplifier. Some surface mount, and the instructions say weld parts like in picture. so good luck with that one, but fortunately there's a Scottish gentleman, G4, and then if that's going to show GM4 JTJ,
and he translated it.
He translated it, built it, and had a lot of experience in his works. Mine doesn't work yet. I'm going to need our Elmer Ron to help.
So that would be like for amplifying an HT or something.
Yeah, or in our case, it will be a television transmitter.
Oh, okay. ATV. Okay, gotcha.
This is what happens when after you finish building kits, you go build your own stuff, don't you? So that's 5.6 gigahertz FM using drone equipment,
Wow.
and that's quite popular in Britain with the clubs who like to build stuff. So I'm wearing television club colours today. Ooh, sorry, that's focus over here. I can't do it. Oh, there you are. Back to front there. I've got the British Amateur TV Club shirt on today, but that's this club. So
That looks like a lot of fun. You could set up a dish and point it across the city.
yeah, it's analog. I mean, there's no computer in it really.
Yeah, but you can set a fixed dish on your tower and then have somebody across town and you can talk back and forth with that.
Yeah, I've got the other one. I've got the other one. This is the club's one, so we can have exchanges on that. Yeah, I'll put the people back on and see if they've got any questions for you. Right. Anybody got in the room got questions for Joe or Robin or the people at home? Oh no.
No, I'm good.
You all right, Robin?
Yeah, right, mateys.
What's been your recent experience? Are you working on any microwavey bits? I know I'm in for a group. The group buy a 10 gigahertz transverter, and I'm a bit scared of that. But I'm gonna try my luck. It's gonna be a hell of a kit.
I've done pretty much nothing to do with amateur radio since my wife passed away. So I really need to boot up the arse to get into gear again. Really. other than sorting out the shack, I haven't done that much. So,
this is an interesting kit. This is called the Morserino 32, and you can do CW through the web or across the room, and it's a code trainer, and it will read your hand sent or paddle sent CW, and it comes from Austria, and it looks like there's a lot of parts in there, but most of the surface mounting already done, and I counted, I think, 11 parts that you actually have to solder to put this together, but it's wonderful. And it's a great code trainer. And so I've used that several times.
Is that on 433 megahertz? So public brand.
It's on LoRa and it's on Wi-Fi.
Oh, cool.
And then here's one. This one is the KD1JV tri-bander. This is available through qrpkits.com, and you can choose the bands. And this one I did 20, 15, and 40. And it's a CW transceiver. See right there. So it's just kind of, what do I grab today and have fun with? It's a lot of fun.
Have you had a go with the Bitex things that made in it that put together in India a bit?
Yes, I have the MicroBitX version 6, and the thing about the full-sized version of that is the board and everything's all done. All you do is put it together. It took me about 45 minutes to put it in the case, but some of the other, like the True SDX and stuff, this takes a long time to put together. But you can also buy these pre-made as well.
Yeah, I mean, members here would be very keen to find kits that look for a single sideband as much as anything. Our code ability is limited, is poor as a group. So
yeah, the QMX would be good, but it has 11 toroids in it, and I would not recommend that for a first-time builder. I would recommend the QMX definitely for an experienced kit builder, because even experienced kit builders are having some issues, because I think part of it is they're a little too anxious to get it put together and on the air. And so you got to take your time on some of these and be super, super careful when you're working with the toroids, because the QMX is another one of those kits that doesn't have a lot of through-hole parts, but it sure has a lot of toroids.
It
Oh,
seems to
yeah.
be consistently a problem with the toroids, though. And if I was from people, it's one of the simplest components you could get, but actually doing it is, people get that wrong the most. And I know that, as you said, that the Hans Summers kits have been, there's been on the list. Quite a chatter about that, and I think, as you say, most of that seemed to be related to toroids or that basic manufacturing of the, at the end of the day, is winding a piece of wire around around your toroid, right? And but it just shows you that simplest of simple things can set you back.
Yep. And so you got to have patience. So I tell people that want those things, if you really want it and you're not a good kit builder, you can get it pre-assembled. But if you're an experienced kit builder, it's an interesting project. And I think he's on version E of his instruction manual already on it. So I've been waiting to start on mine until more people have them completed and I see what the issues are, and then I can write about. Then I can be a little more educated about writing about it in CQ rather than saying, "Yeah, I did this, but mine blew up." Well, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I give myself the best chance to get it through the first time.
I better place my order at some point. I'll have to wait a year simply because everybody else orders Hans's stuff as they come out faster than I do.
Yeah, and somebody I think put a question up, what bands that kit covers, and it's 80, 60, 40, 30, and 20. And the way he does it is he switches in the toroids in series to lower the frequency and then switches them out to raise them for the output filtering. So otherwise you'd have to have a lot more toroids and it wouldn't fit. But it has a microphone, and people don't know that. There is a microphone in there, so it is ready to go to single sideband. And the microphone would be similar to having the little mic on the KX2. And you need an amplified speaker. Well, how about this for a little amplified speaker? So I found that's a little Bluetooth speaker, but you can plug a cable into it as well. And that would be the right size for something like this. So a lot of Bluetooth speakers you find at your stores nowadays do not have the wired connection. They only accept the Bluetooth signal. And so to do that, you would have to have a Bluetooth dongle of some sort to take the audio out. But it does not, the QMX doesn't put out enough audio power to power anything beyond a headset. You would have to use an amplified speaker. And like I said, I found the smallest one, and we'll see how that works.
Cheapest chips. Well done. Okay. Any more questions in the room for Joe, people?
Did you build many Elecraft K2s?
K2s, no.
Yeah.
No, I did not do a K2, but I know several people that have in Omaha, and I've helped them on their boards. K2 is that, the average one with not all the accessories still takes about 40 to 45 hours to do those. Yeah. And I
helped my next door neighbor build one. He built one for his UK intermediate project. Mm-hmm. He built K2, so it's like with wow. SSB and the tuner and the 100-watt PA. It's like,
yeah. It's a very well documented kit, and it uses the smarts on the front panel as part of the test equipment, which is very ingenious.
Yeah, it was good. Shame they've stopped doing them.
Yep. Well, they're still there, but I don't know that you can get them right now. They have trouble getting certain components.
Right. Okay.
There's been I'm just starting doing one. Is it a T41 based on the Teensy?
Yeah, the T41. I'm one of the beta builders for the 4-state QRP group, and it's a modular type thing. you'll build each board, but the surface mount is already there.
Yeah, in this one, I've just got the board. I've got the boards made, and then I've got the boards. I've got all the components, so I've already got the full lot to make.
Yep, that's a very complicated one because of how many interconnects there are.
Yes, I was going to say, because it's modular, about 8 boards or so, but the interconnects are more substantial than the lot that's on the components.
Yeah, yeah, power signal and RF lines going into all these different boards.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I think should we wrap up, Joe? Thank you very much for talking to us.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that.
Is that how did I go down?